Since David took office last spring, I believe we've now met or spoken at least 24 times. We may be leaders from different political traditions, but on a whole host of issues we see eye to eye.
Well, different political traditions, that's an interesting observation, as is the fact that he's counting the number of times he's spoken to the boy David, the head of the rather rickety coalition government. But then President Obama's a rather rickety president. Despite the killing of Osama bin Laden, he's still on 50% in the opinion polls, and that's when the Republican Party doesn't even have a candidate. Indeed, candidates are falling on their way to the starting post at quite a rate of knots. Nonetheless, there's no gainsaying that President Obama's visit to the United Kingdom was a bit of a triumph in public relations terms, at least on this side of the Atlantic. To get an idea how it played on the other, let's talk to a man who knows more about American politics than most, former TalkSport broadcaster and a good pal of mine, US broadcaster Charlie Wolf. Charlie, welcome back to the show, my friend.
Well, thank you, George. It is a pleasure. And let me just mention, I tweeted a moment ago that I had Glenn Beck on Fox, but I've turned the volume down lest you break out in hives.
Very good. That's quite a stereo, Glenn Beck and me. Now, tell me, Charlie, you're not a great fan of Obama, or at least weren't. Maybe you've changed. The worse he's got from my point of view, maybe the better he's got from yours. But do you judge it a success, the visit, or not?
Well, I hate to say this for all the people that are listening, waiting for fireworks, listening to your introduction. I have to agree with you in a large part. From a PR standpoint, yes, it was pretty flawless. The only bits of news that got reported back home was the signing the guest book 2008, which is getting people scratching their heads.
Yes.
And the toast, there was a bit of a toast malfunction, but you can't totally blame him. Other than the fact, of course, that the White House did not give the band the script of his toast, as most governments usually do. So
I didn't realize, I hadn't read, I've been in Beirut for the last few days, I didn't know about the toast malfunction. As long as he didn't raise a glass to Charles and Diana or anything disastrous like that.
No, but he paused, and the band thought he had finished, and they started to play. And to give credit where credit's due, he soldiered on, and it actually sounded pretty good. It sounded, for those of us who've been in music radio, it sounded like he was talking up the vocal, though there is no vocal, obviously, in God Save the Queen, at least in that sort of an instrumental version.
Thank God, the words are even worse than the dirge-like tune, but anyway.
Yes, but I have to agree, he had a mission, which was, of course, on this end, to make sure people knew that the special relationship was intact. I think the best comment that one commentator had recently that's been repeated is that Britain has become a bit of the clingy girlfriend.
Yeah.
And he did send out wrong messages in the beginning, and I don't know if that was through naivete or ignorance, but sending back the bus. He didn't realize, I think, when he first took office, that people watch every single move and they interpret it. And the most subtlest of things has a meaning to it. So he obviously came over to sell that. His Ireland trip was pretty spotless, but how can that go wrong?
Yes.
Ireland is not a political, partner. The speech he gave was reminiscent of his German speech. Was it Berlin? I can't remember now.
Yes.
Berlin speech. It was one of those rock star campaigning speeches, pretty vacuous, but a sweet speech talking about his great grandfather, and it almost sounded like a reinterpretation of Far and Away with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman. But God bless the Irish.
That was a great movie, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
That was a great movie, Far and Away.
Well, if you take away the accents. But over here, now, I'll tell you the truth, I was watching tweets when he was speaking, and everyone over here was going, my gosh, I would think it was, again, God's gift to humanity, the greatest speech ever. I didn't think there was anything all that special about it. Actually, one BBC correspondent gave it a 6 out of 10. And quite frankly, I think, some were saying it didn't have the passion. I think he was a bit overwhelmed by the situation, even though he is no drama Obama. But then again, you've been in Westminster Hall. I've been in Westminster Hall. It's a beautiful, cavernous, humongous space that is filled with, 1,000 years of history.
Yes.
And not only that, but it's filled with the great and the good. I think he was actually, a little bit worried, a little bit put off by the situation, but understandably so. Now, that's over here.
Yes, over there. What was
over there, to a large extent, we're not overly interested. Americans would have been interested from a sort of trivial aspect about the trip to Ireland because, again, there are 36 to 40 million people of Irish descent in America. So it was a campaign trip. Kiss me, I'm Irish. It went over very well. As far as the first day of the trip, meeting the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, William and Catherine, would have played big because we're all into the wedding. Meeting the Queen would have played big. I mean, I loved it. I was down the palace for the first day, and I especially went over to see the 41-gun salute by the Royal Horse Artillery, which is one of my all-time favorite regiments. So it was this strange sort of mix for me of feeling the Englishness of watching the Royal Horse Artillery and seeing all the troops and stuff, but at the same time the Americanism, patriotism of hearing my national anthem being played at the same time. But partly it didn't make the news, partly because obviously of the tornadoes in Missouri, which isn't his fault.
No, but I wanted to ask you about that, Charlie, because there was some flack for the president from the further right, not the far right, but the further right, that he shouldn't have been swanning around abroad when there were tornadoes at home.
Well, I don't know about swanning around. I mean, because a part of a president's job is obviously to be on the world stage. But there was one thing I did pick up a little about, but I haven't heard major conversation, but I did hear one comment picked up was, should he have been sitting there drinking a Guinness with a big smile on his face when people were dying in Missouri? He could have maybe toned that aspect of the trip down. You know, he's mucking about and having a good old fun time with his family members in Montego in Ireland and Offaly. So it's possible that could have been toned down a little bit. Michelle Obama, I think, did very well. But I have to tell you the thing that actually I think where he lost was, put it into a larger context, let's not forget on Thursday before he left, Thursday of last week, he gave a major speech on the Middle East, and of course caused major ructions by talking about Israel returning to the pre-1967 armistice lines. Well, a couple days later, well, first off, the next day, in a very friendly fashion, had a meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu, who really read him the riot act in the nicest of possible ways. The president on the Sunday spoke to AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, where he sort of walked it back a little bit. While he was here in Ireland, or I think maybe, he was in Ireland, Bibi Netanyahu gave a speech to a joint session of Congress that was, by anyone's estimation, a blinder, a tour de force. I mean, he was getting, I can't remember how many standing
41.
ovations. 41, standing ovations. The Congress is more with, and I'm talking both sides of the Congress, is more with Israel and Bibi Netanyahu than they are with Mr. Obama.
No doubt. No doubt. In fact, the American Congress is more with who you call Bibi Netanyahu than the Knesset is. He wouldn't have got a single standing ovation in the Knesset, but he got 41 in the U.S. Congress. So take your pick. That's Charlie's point, and it's mine too. I want to know your view on the special relationship, and I'm most grateful, Charlie, for your insight into that. That's Charlie Wolf, the US broadcaster, kicking off this part of the evening, the debate on the special relationship. How special is it? How special should it be? Is it special at all? Is Britain playing the clingy girlfriend, as Charlie put it? And here's the €64,000 question. Oughtn't we be a little more concerned about our relations with Europe rather than our relations with a country many thousands of miles away, which increasingly looks elsewhere than here for its economic and main political relationships, and which, despite claiming to speak English, has just sent War Cheryl back with her tail between her legs because they couldn't understand the word she was saying.